You ever have one of those days where everything starts off so normal it's almost suspicious? Yeah, that was the Thursday I loaded up the truck with too much gear, grabbed a thermos of instant coffee that tasted like regret, and drove out. To Deadlog Ridge with Spike riding shotgun. Tongue out, tail slapping the glove box like a metronome set to manic. It wasn't actually called Deadlog Ridge on the map. That's just what we called it. The real name was something like Brigadier's Bluff Nature Reserve, but that didn't have the same flavor. Deadlog Ridge got its name the first time I camped there and found a sun-bleached tree that looked like it had crawled out of its own grave and decided to die all over again. It's got one of those weird bends in the middle, like it's bowing to some unseen ghost. Anyway, the weather was crisp. Late spring with that golden light that makes everything feel cinematic. You could smell eucalyptus and pine sap in the air, and the crunch of gravel under the tires was almost meditative. Spike leaned his head out the window like he was absorbing every detail with his snout. Eyes half closed, ears flapping in the wind like a cheap flag. He's a border collie, black and white, with one blue eye and a birthmark on his nose shaped like a heart. People always ask me if I painted it on. I tell them the truth. Nope, that's just how fate stamped him. I've got the same mark, kind of, on the inside of my left foot. A birthmark that looks like a lopsided heart, though mine's more like a smooshed pear if I'm honest. When I found Spike, or rather when he found me, on a trip to Mount Cobbler 3 years ago, he trotted up to my camp with a limp and sat next to me like he'd known me in another life. That night, I noticed the mark on his nose, and I remember thinking, well, ain't that something? It's dumb, I know, but I took it as a sign. Maybe we're connected somehow. Kindred spirits, or just two weirdos marked with a cosmic Sharpie. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So we pull up to the spot, Deadlog Ridge. I park the ute under a stand of stringy barks and start setting up camp. Tent, chairs, fire pit, the works. Spike's already off doing perimeter sweeps, sniffing logs like they owe him money. That's when the first strange thing happened. I'm unpacking the cooler when I hear a crunch behind me, and I turn to see this bloke standing by the fire pit, flannel shirt, cargo pants, big floppy hat like something out of Crocodile Dundee. 3. Budget edition. He's holding a thermos and staring at my firewood pile like it insulted his mother. You reckon you'll have enough wood for the night? He asks, in a voice that could sandpaper drywall. I blink. Yeah, just me and the dog. He nods, doesn't smile, just sort of lingers. Then he says, this is a good place for stories. And then, like a fart in the wind, he walks off into the bush. Didn't hear a car. Didn't hear boots. Just poof, gone. Spike came trotting back with a stick in his mouth like nothing had happened. I stood there for a minute, staring at the empty trail, wondering if I should be concerned. But then I figured, hey, maybe he's just one of those park ranger types that talks in riddles. Every job has its weirdos. I shrugged, cracked open a lukewarm beer, and muttered, this is going to be one of those trips, huh? Spike wagged his tail in agreement. That night, after a quick feed, beans, burnt sausages, and marshmallows that mostly caught fire, Spike and I sat by the fire. The stars came out like shy performers, and the air cooled enough that I had to toss on my old hoodie. You know, the one, gray, a little tight around the gut now, sleeves fraying at the cuffs, smells like every trip I've ever taken. I wore it like armor. I figured I'd wind down by telling Spike a story. Yeah, I know he's a dog, but I swear, that mutt listens better than half my mates. So, I said, poking the fire, did I ever tell you about the possum who tried to steal my pants? Spike tilted his head. Listening. I launched into it. Told him about a solo trip I took up near Warby Ranges. Long story short, a bold possum made off with my laundry while I was bathing in the river. I had to chase it barefoot, half naked for 40 minutes. Locals still talk about it, or so I assume. I never went back to ask. I was just getting to the part about me dangling from a branch when I hear it. Crunch, crunch, footsteps. Now, look, I'm not a paranoid man, But when you're miles from the nearest paved road and someone walks up on your fire unannounced, your hackles rise. I stood, grabbing the poker just in case. Spike didn't growl, though. He just barked once, a friendly woof. Out of the dark stepped 3 people, a woman in a leather jacket and beanie, a kid about 12 with a fishing rod, at night, and an older guy with a face like sun-baked leather. They looked like they'd wandered out of 3 different time zones. "Mind if we join your fire?" the woman asked. I hesitated, then nodded. "Sure, but I'm not sharing my marshmallows." She grinned. "Fair." They sat. The kid poked the flames with a stick, and the old guy just stared into the coals, like they owed him answers. Then the woman said, "We're trading stories tonight. That's the deal." I raised a brow. "Deal?" "Yep. Campfire swap," she said. "You tell one, we tell one. No lies, no take-backs." Now, I'd had exactly 2.5 beers at this point, and something about the scene felt like a dare. So I said, "All right, but I already told my best story to the dog." The kid laughed. "Dogs keep secrets better than people," so I told another one, about the time I accidentally trespassed on a nudist colony during a hiking trip and had to pretend I was there on purpose. Full eye contact, 0 blinking. They howled with laughter. Then it was their turn. The kid told a yarn about catching a fish with a stick and shoelace. The woman's story was about crashing her mum's ute into a dam trying to avoid a kangaroo that turned out to be a lawn ornament. Then came the old guy. His voice was like gravel in a coffee grinder. "I once followed a set of dog prints that matched my own boot prints. Like someone, or something, was walking parallel to me, but never seen." We all went quiet. Then he leaned in and said, "Some stories aren't told. They're lived." He stood up. "I think I've had enough firelight for one night," he said. "Be seeing you, mate." And off he walked. No flashlight, no sound, just gone. I turned to the woman. She just shrugged. Some people live inside stories. Some people don't know they're in one. I didn't sleep much that night. Next morning I found a folded note in my boot. It just said, "Follow the trail of the heart." I thought it was a prank at first, some kind of rustic bush escape room setup, but as I hiked out with Spike, packed up, boots laced, coffee thermos, swinging from my belt, we came to a fork in the trail that wasn't there before. I swear on my favorite enamel mug, it wasn't on any map I had. And right at the edge of that trail, a rock, painted, crudely, with a heart. Spike ran down it like he'd been here 100 times. I followed. The trail wound down into a gully with soft earth, wombat holes, and the kind of sunlight that filtered through like spilled syrup. At the bottom was a clearing, and in that clearing a stump. On the stump was a tin lunchbox, rusted, hinges bent, but clearly placed there on purpose. I opened it. Inside were scraps of old paper, napkins, receipts, torn notebook pages. Each had a story written on it, dozens of them. Some were funny, some were heartbreaking, some made no sense at all, and every single one ended with the same line. This story was traded for another. Spike nosed the box and looked at me like, "Well?" I sat down on the stump, pulled a pen from my pack, tore a page from my own notebook, and wrote my story, the one I'd told last night. When I finished, I folded it and placed it in the box. As I closed the lid, I noticed someone had etched a shape into the metal. A heart. My birthmark. Spike's. I didn't say anything for a long while. I just sat there and listened to the wind through the trees and the distant calls of magpies and the quiet, impossible feeling that I'd become part of something bigger than me. A living, breathing library of fireside stories. Later that evening, back at home, I sat on the deck with Spike curled at my feet, snoring like a tractor with asthma. I looked at the fading light and thought about what that woman said. Some people live inside stories. I reckon that's true. Stories find us, not the other way around. They walk up to our campfires with fishing rods and weird hats and say, "Mind if I sit a spell?" And you say yes, because deep down we're all just waiting for someone to ask. Spike twitched in his sleep, probably dreaming of wombats or sausages. Looked at the heart-shaped mark on his nose, then down at my foot. Funny how things come full circle. So here's my advice. If you ever camp at Dead Log Ridge, bring extra firewood, a good sense of humor, and a story worth trading. Because someone out there is listening, and they might just be waiting for yours.